Desculpa aí, gente. Então, primeiro, agradecimento aos voluntários, ao CIEDS, à Faixa, o Multissentidos, o Coletivo Jovem, todos que se inscreveram pelo site e a presença de todos os voluntários que ajudaram a realizar esse evento. Temos voluntários aqui? Cadê os voluntários? Vamos ver. Uma pessoa, duas, três. Não, eu já vi. Além disso, os patrocinadores, a gente fica feliz em agradecer, porque sem eles não teria acontecido o evento. Secretaria da Cultura do Rio de Janeiro e a Oi, os copatrocinadores Coca-Cola e Firjan, o apoio do Instituto CIA e o apoio cultural da Oi Futuro. Claro, todos os parceiros que estão aqui nesses tapumes todos. Eu gostaria de particularmente agradecer o apoio que eu tive da Salompas para a tarde de hoje. E torcicolo forte. E, gente, olha só, falando sério agora. Eu acho que em breve a gente vai estar com esse palco cheio aqui, esse auditório cheio, porque a pessoa que vai falar agora é uma pessoa realmente fora da curva. Eu diria que ele está aí nos 0,5% das pessoas no mundo que mais entende de cultura e de políticas open source, peer-to-peer, de common goods, né, do bem comum, que é o Michel Bauwens, que é um ativista. E além de ser primeiro ele é um ativista, depois ele é um estudioso, escritor, pesquisador e conferencista sobre o tema da inovação em tecnologia, cultura e negócios. E ele é um pensador da teoria peer-to-peer, que provavelmente ele vai explicar um pouquinho mais aqui, mas eu acho que a maioria de nós já sabe, pelo menos intuitivamente, do que se trata, e é um dos fundadores do Peer-to-Peer Foundation, que é uma iniciativa muito foda, que traz informações e conhecimento muito relevante com relação a melhores práticas disso no mundo, e é uma possibilidade de que um dos primeiros papers sobre o Bitcoin, né, feito pelo, como é que é o nome? Satoshi Nakamoto. E a gente se conhece, né? Estamos no Tropical Burn juntos, né? Satoshi Nakamoto. Parece que um dos primeiros papers foi publicado no Peer-to-Peer Foundation. Ele vai fazer a palestra de encerramento do dia, do palco e do Colabora América 2018. Então recebam aí com uma salva de palmas Michel Bauwens.
Peguei uma chuva, peguei uma chuva, presente da natureza, minha floresta abençoa. Presente da natureza, minha floresta abençoa.
I'm just testing, just a moment. It seems to come back every time I push it, so let's see. Is it staying? Yes. So I'm supposed to start, right? Okay. Well, this is the fourth time I come to Rio, and I already told my wife some time ago that if I wasn't married, this is where I'd like to live, but unfortunately I can't. But I really love to come here. I was really lucky this time with the rain, but here we go. Okay, so I heard P2P Foundation, so maybe I shouldn't explain that, but just want to say that since just a moment, yeah, this is not reacting the way I'd like to. It's actually going in the wrong direction. I want to go backward to the first slide, yes. Sometimes you're better off without any technology, as you can see. So if it's not working, I'll do it in a real 3D. Okay, thank you. So, it's actually the one before. Okay, I'll leave it there, sorry. So I just wanted to add something. So I also work with SMART, which in French means Société Mutuelle des Artistes. And we are a labor mutual. So what we do is we invoice for artists and freelancers. And we calculate an average salary. on which you have to pay taxes, but then you get full social protection. And so we're present in nine different European countries. We have 20,000 cooperative members, so it's a weird situation because you're a member of the co-op, and the co-op is your employer, but you're still free to choose your project. So we call this post-subordinate labor. I just want to mention it because it's a part of what I see as a transition is to create new organizations that can also defend more the people that are precarious and that are doing transition work, that often are pioneering, don't find money. So these new organizations are important to allow us to do our work. Okay. Okay, and I tell you next. Okay, okay. So, next, please. Yeah. So, the next slide is actually one of my most popular slides, and it's just to stress the importance of knowing where you are, right? So in the sense of, if you're online and you're working with other people, collaborating, you have to know where you are. You have to know the architecture of the place. And a lot of people would say technology is neutral, it depends what you do with it. And I completely disagree with this. I would say technology is not neutral because it is designed. And so I'll use the very old, maybe outdated concept of class struggle. And so for me, this is class struggle 3.0. This is the conflict today, which is no longer only capital and labor. It's also about socio-technical systems. What are we building to work together at scale, or even locally, right? So this is just very briefly. So today we have a massive expansion of what I call peer-to-peer systems. These are open, permissionless, contributory systems. That means anybody can join. You don't have to ask permission. And this is the new modality that we see emerging in every field, whether it's politics, business, even spirituality. But they all look the same, but they actually can be very, very different. And so if you look here, you have centralized for-profit. So think about Facebook, where 2 billion people can communicate with each other. I work with a community fisheries association in Belgium that is on the Facebook, so they're organizing their ecological food supply chain and using Facebook to collaborate, so you can do good things with the system. But the thing is, of course, everything in the background is centralized, right? You don't own it. There's no co-governance. You don't own your data. There's no control over your data. So these are actually hyper-centralized systems. And one of the things that I say is, I hope you understand it, we are moving from a Marxist capitalism to a Proudhonian capitalism. Because in the 19th century, these two guys were discussing with each other where the surplus came from. And Marx would say it comes from the surplus value from the worker and from nature. And Proudhon said, no, it comes from human cooperation, right? So if you have 100 craft people working alone, or they work together, they produce a lot more when they're together. And this is the surplus. And so the new companies today, this is what they're doing. They let us engage peer-to-peer, making commons together, exchange products and services together, and then they capture immediately, like in the Middle Ages, the toll booths in the Middle Ages, they capture 30 to 70% of our cooperative work. And if you look at Facebook in particular, you don't get any of that value in return. Yes, you can use the system, but you cannot make a living because 100% of the surplus value that is commercialized goes to the owners. Okay, so the second one is what I call distributed capitalism. You might have heard that IBM did its biggest buy of a company called Red Hat. Red Hat is an open source company. They paid $34 billion. This year we invested 18 billion, I think, already in the blockchain projects. Before I say the good we can do with it, I want to briefly also critique it. because the vision behind these designs of distributed capitalism is that we're all separate. We can't really trust each other, so we'll have smart contracts with each other that can be verified by technology, right? So fundamentally, this is a vision of hyper-capitalism. And this is designed in these systems. Now, with the first one, with Smart is a platform cooperative. So we say, we do want to exchange labor, but why should we do it on somebody else's property? So we want the workers, our 20,000 members, to own the platform. So the platform is our commons, even though we engage in work and market transactions. I hope that makes sense. So what we're doing is we are changing netarchical platforms, capitalist platforms, platform capitalism into platform cooperativism, right? I propose to do the same with the blockchain. So look at the blockchain, and I want to briefly explain why the blockchain is so important. The blockchain is to transactions what the internet is to communication, right? So if we want to move from cooperating online, making designs together, making software together, building knowledge together, if we want to actually make things together, we need something transactional. And that's what the blockchain offers as a promise. So kind of second internet that allows people to globally scale their cooperation and to do supply chains and accounting and all that stuff together, right? So this is its importance, and I want to tell you a little story because I was very critical, right? And I was a bit blinded by my own ideology, I would say, because I saw the environmental issues around Bitcoin and those kinds of things. And then I went to an evening, a crypto evening in Chiang Mai, where I live. Chiang Mai is in the north of Thailand. We have 25,000 global nomadic workers in Chiang Mai. So these are developers, designers that don't have to be in a physical place, so they can work from their computer. I met people there from Mozilla Foundation. They get $4,000 in California, but they work in Chiang Mai, where they only have to spend 1,000. And so they work a year or two, and then they don't need a salary for the next few years, right? This is the kind of why people are there. And here's what he said, and that was an epiphany for me. Oh wow, I didn't know this. And here's the story. So he said, the problem in Chiang Mai is that we cannot motivate any developer anymore with money. And I thought that was, wow, that's a dream, right? So how do they do this? And I consider developers are workers. Yeah, they don't have capital. They have a body, they have a brain, they're connected to the internet, but they have to work to make a living. They're not capitalists. They're just, immaterial workers, let's put it that way. So how do they do this? Because they use the blockchain to their advantage. So instead of before, you had to go to a banker or a venture capital who then takes equity, and if you're lucky, the founders will get rich. But at the same time, they lose control of their company because of the shares they have to give, right? Here, what you do is you make a white paper. You explain basically what it is you are making in the future. And then you do a crowdfunding, which means that anybody can invest in your project. And usually 40% of that investment is kept for the working people. So this explains a bit to me and maybe to you why this is such an important thing. So you move from individual companies competing with each other to ecosystems. Now, it's by no means an equal ecosystem. It's very unequal. Actually, if you look at Bitcoin as a property, as an asset, it's more unequal than any other official currency. So it doesn't work to equalize at this stage. But what it does, it makes it into an ecosystem. So it's designed that no single party can dominate the ecosystem. This is a big step forward. Plus the fact that it generates possibilities for workers to change the relationship between capital and work and get more capital for work. So this is when I said, oh, I cannot just critique the blockchain, I have to look into the positive places, right? The positive aspects. So very briefly, I want to explain what I'm working on right now. A brief word about accounting, because the blockchain is a ledger. It's basically a way to get universal accounting. And I read a little book called Double Entry. It's a history of accounting. So just to give you why accounting is so important. The first written word that we find in history of mankind is a ledger. So in Mesopotamia, the first stone tablet is actually a ledger. So that means that accounting is co-equal in it evolves together with class society. When we have the state, and the temples were the original state, that were managing the in and outflow of rice, they needed accounting. So accounting stands for the birth of civilization. Second, a Franciscan monk, I forgot his name, I think it's Paciolucci or something like that. So in the 15th century, formalized and synthesized what he called double entry book accounting. Now let me tell you what's wrong with that system. You look at the world from your point of view, your assets, what comes in, what comes out, how much is left for me as an individual or corporation, right? That means you don't see ecosystems. It's invisible to you. You can only see your point of view. So double entry book accounting is equal with the development of capitalism, right? With a competitive system where every person in the competition or corporation only looks at its own benefit within a system. Okay. So here's what we need to do and what we can do with distributed ledgers. So we talked a lot about the circular economy in the last 2 days, but here's my point of view, and I said this in the panel. We need a LSD economy. Yeah? Libre, solidaire, et durable in French. I think it works in Portuguese, right? So Libre is very important, and as a little critique of the MacArthur Foundation, they don't talk much about the Libre. They kind of assume that the same type of corporations we have today will just start to become circular. The thing is, you know, if we have to negotiate what kind of data we are going to share, it's going to take 200 years. Yeah, and we have 12 years. Okay? So this is not going to work. We need open and shared supply chains. That's one. These will be connected to distributed ledgers that verify if this transaction took place, right? So that's step number 2. And then we need 3 new types of accounting. And here's the thing, everything I tell you already exists. But we need a vision, which I hope I can offer to you, of how these things fit together. How we can puzzle together from what people are already doing, trying to change the world, but they're doing it on their own. They're in a survival mode, so they only see their own project, right? And of course, I'm not arguing that we need a new Bolshevik party telling everybody what to do. What I'm arguing is we need a lot more mutual alignment and mutual coordination. So we need transparent systems where everybody can see what everybody is doing, and then we can adjust our behavior to the needs of the ecosystem. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so 3 new types of accounting are being developed as we speak. The first one is contributive accounting. If you are in an open contributory system, it's based on contributions, not labor. Yeah? As a community, you have to decide how to recognize and value contributions. It's not just an hour work. It can be, I bring a lab, you can use my lab. You can use my computers. Here is a bunch of code. Yeah? Or I take care of the daycare while you are working. Depends. As a community, as a peer production community, you need to have a vision of how to value all contributions. And just as a reminder, we said it in the panel yesterday, today we only recognize market value. In other words, extractive value. If we extract value from people or nature, we get rich. If you want to be generative let's say, improve the soil every year while you're farming organic food, you're not going to get rich. Yeah? If you volunteer, you clean up the beaches when a tanker has polluted it, you're not going to get rich. So you see the structural problem we are having in the current system. We only fund structurally extractive activities. And the good stuff that we need to survive more than ever, well, maybe it's philanthropy, maybe it's taxation, but it's always derivative. It's always after we already did the damage, right? So contributive accounting is a way to recognize positive social externalities. In other words, the good stuff that people do to make your system work. Okay, we have that. We did a study of 300 projects. 76% of these groups were using contributive accounting. Doesn't have to be complicated. Can be, if you're translators, you know, you count your characters, you do 30% free, so you don't get paid for that. That's your common good activity. And then you work for money, and you say, okay, 20% of the market value goes to the other accounting systems to fund the common good work. Does that make sense? So it doesn't have to be very complicated. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, contributive accounting. Second form of accounting which is being developed right now, it actually exists already 20 years, it's called REA accounting. Resources, events, actions. No double entry. This flow accounting. So what this accounting does is just tell you, I'm in a network collaborating with many people. Where am I in this network? This is, you know, not a vision, because with this accounting you see the ecosystem, right? Okay, this is, I think you're following me. Number 3, thermodynamic accounting. So we need accounting that tells us how not to exceed planetary boundaries. Yesterday I was listening to Jonathan Dawson, right? He explained the planet boundaries. Kate Raworth, the donut, where she makes 2 circles. The outer circle is what you cannot go beyond. And then the inner circle is, within that boundary, how do we solve social needs? Yeah? So this is the kind of thing we need to know. Money doesn't tell us anything about this. Oil should be very expensive, it's very cheap. So the financial signals today do not give us any information about the ecosystem. So we need direct material accounting. And so just to give you one example, there's one group called Reporting 3.0. So they look at global stocks, copper, cobalt, whatever. This is how much we have. If we find something more, then we can add it to the stock. And then we look at biocircularity. If we reuse copper, how much copper is left for the second round, right? For the circular economy. And here's the thing, we have to stay within 1% material growth. Otherwise we're exponential. So you might have heard of peak resources. Peak resources is when we get half of the good out of the earth. The easy half. So after peak resource moment, you have the difficult half. Gets more and more expensive to get the stuff. Doesn't mean there's nothing left, but it means the good times are over. And for many, many resources being calculated, it's 10, 20, 30 years away. If we are above the 1% growth rate in matter and energy terms, it's not going to work. The only thing we can do is maximize more 60 years before we reach peak resource moments. So we can't do it, right? So this is why we need multi-capital accounting and we need matter energy accounting. The good news is people are working on this. So I hope you follow my vision. Follow me now. We have shared supply chains, holoptical, to use a difficult word. Why use a simple word when you can use a difficult one? So holoptical means everybody can see everything. Yeah? Today we have panoptical systems. Only the top can see everything. And the lower you are in the hierarchy, the less you can see of the ecosystem. So holoptical systems, shared supply chains, integrated with accounting plugins. This is how we're going to do it. And I want to say a word about externalities. This is absolutely key. We have to integrate externalities, right? Again, I'm going to use the blockchain as an example of how we could do this. This is a project called Region Network. they talk about something called ecological state protocols. So the state of the ecology. We need to decarbonize, we need more biodiversity. So we come to an agreement as a society about the framework in which what we have to achieve. Then we have a system, an open, permissionless, contributory system where everybody who has these kinds of impacts can verify and have recognized their activity. Does that make sense? Yeah? So we put that on a ledger. And then we tokenize it. So I want to give you a brief idea why tokens are important. Tokens are designed money. Yeah? Every money is designed. We didn't used to see that. We thought money was money, just something. No, money is designed. It's designed to work in a certain way. And just to give you a really example to make you understand this, Bernard Lietard in his books about money talks about the Middle Ages. From the 11th to the 13th century in Europe, we had negative interest money. What it meant is its value would go down because the lords or whatever was in power or the cities would take 5 coins every 4 years and give you back 4. So you had to invest it, otherwise, because you couldn't accumulate it, right? So in this period, we have a tripling of the European population, a doubling of the European population, and a tripling of the Western European population. We have, in the cemeteries, women are taller than today. They were healthy and they had good food. Anyway, so then we have the First Crusade against the heretics, the Cathars, the French king and the bishop destroyed this civilization in the south of France, and they introduce interest-based money. They change the design. In the 14th century, Europe collapses. The plague comes because they had destroyed the social fabric. Okay, just to give you an idea, money has a design. Yeah? That second type of money was meant to make the bankers and the king richer. That was the design. This is the kind of money we have. Tokens allow us to change the design of money. Yeah? That means that if you have a different value system, you can code it and it can work within your community. So the idea that I defend is the following. It's called value sovereignty. Within your community, if you want to change the world, you need value sovereignty. You need to declare yourself, this is what has value for us. Right? Because you're not strong enough yet to change the whole thing. So you change it where you can. You build a membrane between the outside world and your economy. And you refilter what's coming in, because you still need it most of the time. And you redistribute it according to your own value system. Yeah? And this today is becoming easier. Little argument. A lot of people on the progressive side, especially in Europe, the only word they're using now is territory, localization. You know, it's all about le territoire and everything. Okay, it's fine. I have nothing against it. But we also have virtual nations. Yeah, the people who live in Chiang Mai with me, those 25,000 people, like me. So just to tell you what happens in a nation-state environment. So my dear nation asked me to deregister from Belgium because I don't live there anymore. So I have zero protection. Yeah? I lose all my rights. In Thailand, I'm not allowed to work. So explain to me how that can work, right? So people like us, we create virtual nations. We create solidarity systems that are not based on territory, but on tribal affinity, what we are doing together. We're doing Linux, we're doing Arduino, we're doing Wikipedia, we're doing Ether, we're doing all these projects create, if you like, virtual nations. And this is going to be very important in the future. The nation state can no longer change the world. It's as easy as that, right? Because we have transnational capital. So we cannot oppose transnational capital with just one nation state. So we need to build transnational, translocal institutions, networks, organized networks. So first, we already have them, global open source communities. Yeah, they're already doing it. They're working together on a global scale. Then we have global entrepreneurial coalitions. People working around the commons and making a living around their shared resource. We have them also in Spiral. I'm very happy that in Brazil, when I was here the first time in 2012, I met people from Curto Café. Fantastic, pure 100% peer-to-peer business model. Yeah? I'm a bit skeptical at first because I know many projects with big ideas, but they don't make it. And I'm so very happy to hear that Curto Café is doing very, very well in Brazil. So if you need a proof that this can work, go see them and ask them how they work. I won't explain it today, but so these are systems that are not bound to a particular place or nation. They can, they're kind of protocols, like how we do things that can be copied by other people and then adapted to local situations. I'm probably going to talk too long, so somebody is going to be, has to stop me at some point. You're going to do it? Okay. So Okay, I go on. So I want to change the language, unsuccessfully so far, from the word entrepreneur to entrepreneur. Yeah? Entrepreneur means taking in between. And I live in Thailand, and my wife, when she talks about the big people, she calls them the eaters. This is how the common people used to see entrepreneurs, right? Because they are in between and they extract value. What if we are entrepreneurs? This means we have a commons, we have the resources that we need as a commons, and we think, how can I generate value for these resources and for these communities? Yeah, you see how that is a shift in consciousness when you start looking at yourself as an entrepreneur. You still engage with the market, but you have a different vision of what it is you are doing. So just, I would like to leave that with you. Okay, I'm moving to the third quadrant, which is local and for benefit. So very quickly, I did a study in Ghent in 2016, and we discovered that there was an exponential increase of urban commons today. So people living in cities, living in bioregions, even in rural regions that say, this is not working anymore, but the state and the market are not moving, so we have to do it. Yeah? So in Ghent, we went from 50 urban commons projects to 500. So just want to give you an example of how that can work. If you want a house, you can buy a house, private, right? The private way. In Europe, I think about 30% less, or maybe even more than that, of young people can afford to buy a house now than 20 years ago. So slowly this avenue is closing. Yeah? We're going back to renting because less and less young people can afford to buy. And in Italy, the average age of staying with your family is 42, right? That's amazing, isn't it? Because young people cannot afford to rent. It's as simple as that. So they can choose, if I stay with my parents, I can go on a holiday, I can buy CDs, I can buy books, I can go out. If I rent on my own, I'm poor and I can't do anything. This is a choice they're making. I know many people like that. So, housing. You can do public housing, but there's never been so little social housing built as today. So basically social housing has collapsed as a method in the last, under neoliberalism. In Ghent, they're small, but you can do it. You have a community land trust. This is about buying up land, taking it out of the speculative market so the value stays stable, and you can have stable rent for the rest of your life. So for that you need the second thing, which is the housing co-op. Yeah? So the land, community land trust, the bricks, the housing co-op. And then the services of, if you want, co-housing. So this is mutualizing the everything you need to, to live, and that it's cheaper if you do it together than if you do it alone. Why are urban commons so important? One example that I mentioned in the panel was dégage, which means actually get out of the way in French. 130 cars, 1,300 people. full mobility. So it's calculated so that every member of this association has full mobility. Every shared car replaces 9 to 13 private cars. So I'm not good at math, but if you're good at it, but let's put it simple. 80% less use of matter and energy to maintain the same system. Yeah? Now I want to make a little argument why lifeboat strategies today might not be the answer. So you know what lifeboat strategies means? It means, okay, I know the world is fucked up. We're not going to make it, but I'm going to move to the mountains or wherever, right? That's what rich people are doing right now. They're buying land in New Zealand and everything. But a lot of people that I know without money are also trying to do this. So this is called a lifeboat strategy. But here we have, I don't know in Brazil, but we have hundreds of nuclear plants. The half-life of a nuclear plant is 100,000 years. Yeah? Now, what does it mean? It means that if we don't maintain complex systems, we're going to be fried anyway, right? You're going to be in your nice little hilly, you know, the Shire somewhere, but the radioactivity is going to be exploding over time. So this means, and this is really a difficult thing, right? We cannot change exactly the way we would like to. We have to change while maintaining certain complex systems. That means that we are really stuck in many ways with certain levels of technology. So we can't do what we did after the Roman Empire, which is leave the cities, go to the monasteries, or go find protection from a feudal lord, live a subsistence economy, and there's no more books, no more roads, no more ceramics for 500 years, right? We can't do it. It's not going to work. So I want to maybe kind of start ending with the kind of leaving you with a notion of why the commons are so important. If you look at world history, and there's a fantastic study called HANDY, Human and Nature Dynamics. So they look at a predator-prey model. So you have tigers and gazelles. Yeah, so the tigers eat more and more gazelles because there are a lot of gazelles. And the tigers get very fat, but they eat too much gazelles. So the gazelles population dives, and the tigers have no food. This happened with every civilization since the Neolithic. Yeah, civilizations are mortal. You know that because otherwise there would still be the Roman Empire and the Egyptian Empire. They're not there. This literally means that every civilization has collapsed. Yeah, every one. And now we have that at a world scale, particular, you know, really serious issue. What happened after every collapse is that civilizations would commodify. So think about the end of the Roman Empire in Europe. The monks, yeah, they live like the middle class, but at 5% of the cost of the Roman elite. They have shelter, they have a spiritual life, they are literate, they have books. You know, of course, there's a lot of things we don't like in that way of life, but we don't have to copy them. It's just the notion of mutualization. So I consider the monks and the Catholic Church as a global open source community of the Middle Ages. You know, creating a global network of knowledge that was shared on a vast, you know, continental scale. Mutualizing the buildings and then the subsistence economy, relocalizing the economy. So what are we doing now? We have global open source communities. So we are remutualizing knowledge. We have the sharing economy. A lot of bad examples, but also many good examples. We are mutualizing physical infrastructures in the urban commons. And this is the next step. We want to cosmo-localize production. So cosmo-local is not national protectionism, but it's also not global neoliberalism. Yeah? We spend 3 times more matter and energy to transport things than to make them. It's unsustainable. So what if we move from economies of scale, which means having to produce more and more of everything to make it cheaper and outcompete others, to economies of scope, meaning doing more with the same. So you make stuff locally, but you have access to all the knowledge that's constantly evolving. So if you look at open source cars, which are not competitive right now, but they exist. They have cars that can change they have a biodegradable, what you call it, the thing around the motor. Every 3 years you just change, it's fully 100% biodegradable, yeah? So we have lots of technology that's out there, and so the idea is let's create global open design communities. Let's share the knowledge around food, around transportation, about habitat, but then we do it locally, right? This is cosmo-local production. I would suggest this as a next step. We had natural resource commons that Ostrom describes. These were destroyed, at least in the West, by capital, the enclosures, the closing down of the commons. Then the workers, who were the farmers who were expelled from the land, they died when they were 35 in 1850. So they created social commons, mutual societies, friendly societies, unions, and all co-ops and that stuff. Then we invented knowledge commons. That's what the internet stands for, right? We discovered, wow, we can work together, we can share knowledge, it's possible to work together. And then we moved to the urban commons. Oops, it's gone. The urban commons, which is not really producing yet, but what we're doing is we're redistributing already, right? We don't make the cars, but we create a car sharing co-op. We redistribute. What we need to do is the next step, which is actually making cars. And so then I want to actually go to the top right and start wrapping up. I'm going to say that 4 or 5 times. Which is global for benefit. So I'm coming back to my key argument. We need to build global counterpower. We need to work globally together. Even if you do permaculture, yeah? We need SLOC, small, local, open and connected. Yeah, not just local. You do permaculture, but you learn from the global open permaculture community. But this is not enough, because this is still using the global for the local. What I want is that we are also able to work globally together at the global level for the global level, right? An example, and then I really stop. Okay, here's what I found. I was in Italy a few years ago, and you have the Solidariedade economy in Italy, which is fairly big. And within the Solidariedade economy, you have community-supported agriculture. In this little world, they have 13 different pieces of software to order food. It's absolutely crazy. We can't do it like that. We have to mutualize, right? So here's how I see this. Progressive cities, because this is where we can work today. The nation state is going to be very difficult in the next 10, 15 years. But we can work at the local level, we can work with cities, yeah? If you look at the voting patterns in many of these national populist victories, what you see is the cities voted differently. So there's a lot of opportunity at the city level. Cities should form leagues of cities, as a transnational form of governance. Yeah? This is the institution, different institutions that work together to create these online depositories. So we need a commons infrastructure for food, for transportation, for mobility, underwritten by cities, co-ops, ethical finance, etc., etc. And then we can use it and localize it and change it and adapt it. But we need a common ground to work together and to be competitive, or I'd rather use the word to out-cooperate the corporations, yeah? We need to up the level of what I call functional governance. We need to be better than them. If we just hippies, it's not going to work, yeah? Nothing against hippies, I was one, but okay, so now I really should find a good conclusion. I still have 15 minutes. Oh, that's fine. Then I need to, that's fantastic. So can you do the next one? Okay, next. Yes, this is kind of important to understand. Yeah, you can't really see it, but I'll explain to you anyway. So if I look at my own work and that of the P2P Foundation, we first looked at open source communities. We looked at how do they work? What's their governance? What are their property mechanisms? What are the licenses doing for them? How do they manage their infrastructure? And then worked with Ecuador in 2014. We worked on national knowledge commons there, and then I worked in Ghent on urban commons. And here's what I found. The commons economy has the same fundamental structure. Yeah? So historically, people have worked with 4 modes of exchange. One is the commons, which is mutualizing a resource. So the individual contributes to something that is a whole thing. So if you're a Linux developer, you write code, you put it in Linux, but nobody in Linux owes you anything back personally. The idea is more, I give a brick and I get a better house. Yeah? That's the idea of commoning. You are contributing to a collective resource. This is the original way of humanity. If you're a small band of nomad, 40 people, you don't want to carry anything, right? So property is not interesting. You mutualize. It's for everyone. Once we settle down, we make villages, we have a problem. I would like to have what the other village has, right? So you need to make peace. And this is the gift economy. Some people confuse the gift economy with the commons. It's not the same. A gift economy is, I give you something, and paradoxically, I create inequality through my gift, because now you owe me something. Yeah? And so the gift economy is when I create inequality through my gift, and the other person on the receiving end will want to give me something back to restore our mutual status as equals. So this is the complex tribal arrangement, which was dominated by these gift economy dynamics. And then one day, maybe because of climate change somewhere, some tribe says, we can't survive on our own, so we got to take it from somebody else, right? So imagine what happens then. Can you still do the gift economy? No. What you need then is a way to justify your domination. So you're going to take, but you have to give back. This is redistribution. This is the role of the state. Yeah? Think about European Middle Ages. The Lord gets 50% of all production, and then he competes in giving to the church, and the church does the social security. Yeah? It's a circle, it's a redistributive system based on some kind of state function. And then we have capital, markets, which have also existed for a long time, but became dominant in Europe only because the cities were independent and there was no empire to dominate the market. So the current system, if you still follow me, is market, state, and the nation. And they co-evolve together. So our system today is 3 in 1. If one is attacked, the 2 others save it. And here's what I see in the commons. The core of the commons is the contributory community. So in other words, it's the nation, not a state nation, but it's the community of people contributing to this particular project. Yeah? And they're open contributed systems, but they are real communities as well. There's a core that makes it work as one system. And value is created through contributions. So this is important because this means civil society today, you're a citizen, you actually can be seen as productive. So I look at the basic income not as a way of redistributing. I look at the basic income as society saying thank you for contributing to society. Because if you go away from market value, I dare you to find a person who is not contributing. Seriously. Who is not contributing in some way to our common survival. Okay, we can disagree, but this is my point of view, right? But in any case, so the core of society in this new world is civil society. It's people contributing freely to common projects. As these people need to organize themselves, right? They build for-benefit associations. Look at the open source economy. You can see it very clearly. You look at Wikipedia, and you see the Wikimedia Foundation. You look at Linux, you see the Linux Foundation. You see Drupal, you see Drupal Association. It's the same at the urban commons level. Whenever I looked, when I was studying the 500 projects, we saw the same pattern. Behind the contributory systems, we saw that there was an entity managing the infrastructure of cooperation. But here's the difference with NGOs. An NGO sees the world in a fundamental way the same as a capitalist sees the world, as a world of scarcity. So we have a problem, and we want to solve that problem. So we're going to find resources to solve that problem, and we're going direct the resources to the problem, right? So it's basically a command structure, just as a corporation. Maybe a bit better, but it's essentially the same worldview, but a different way to look at the same situation. What we find in open source is quite different. These for-benefit associations are enabling, participating, so they manage the infrastructure of cooperation, and they do not command the work. So the Wikimedia Foundation doesn't tell any contributor in the Wikipedia what to do. The Linux Foundation doesn't tell any developer do this or do that. They are not command systems, right? What they do is, we know there is a problem that needs code. We know there is thousands and thousands of people who could do it. So we create an enabling mechanism that is transparent so that people can see, oh, I can do this, right? So that's what they do. They build these infrastructures, they're facilitating. Now, here's the leap I'm making. I'm saying this is the state. This is the state of the open source economy, yeah? This is the common good institutions. And this is where I'm different from most libertarian people. There's two kinds of libertarians. The libertarians on the left, they say we don't need a state, we just need groups, and these groups will negotiate each other and form federations, right? And then the libertarians on the right, they say there's only individuals, and these individuals need to talk together, make contracts, and so this is one vision. I would argue that this vision doesn't have any common good. It doesn't have any vision for interests that transcend the group and the individual. So in other words, in what field are we operating? Who takes care of the field? Commons are not equal, yes? So if you live in a rich city with a good economy, your commons are going to be a lot richer than a commons of poor people who have two jobs just to survive, right? In a region where the economy is not working. So you still need institutions that look at the common good, what I would call the commons of capability, right? So I know a person, a woman, Geneviève Fontaine, she's doing fantastic work on converging Ostrom, the 8 principles of the commons, the governance of the commons, with Amartya Sen and the capabilities approach, right? And so then if you look at the state, what's the role of the state, of the city, or any territorial organization? It is to make sure that every citizen has capabilities to contribute to the commons. You know, so there's still a role there. Okay. Third, as we need to live and thrive while we work for the commons, we engage with the market. But this market has to be different. We need embedded, generative, ethical markets. So as a commons community, you're going to look at the market and say, this thing has to work for me or for us, right? So I propose, or the P2P Foundation proposes, something like the copy fair licensing system. So this is a bit weird, but today we have copy left and copyright. Copyright, capitalism, this is mine. You can't touch it, or you have to pay me. Copy left, a communist, purely communist license. It says everybody can contribute and everybody can use. So I welcome IBM, you can use the code, right? So the paradox is the open source economy today is entirely dominated by big corporations. Even though this type of license, right, I call this the communism of capital. And they're very good at it, by the way. Okay, so what is copy fair? Copy fair is what in the 19th century we would have called a socialist license, to each according to his contribution. Yeah? So what does it say? It says the knowledge is free and everybody can share the knowledge. But if you want to commercialize and make money out of our work, you need to reciprocate in some way. So this is the idea. So a membrane between the community and the market. Inside you practice value sovereignty with contributive accounting, and you use the copy-fair licensing principles to regulate your interaction with the market. So here's how it goes. I mean, in terms of change, how you could look at this change. Before we had capitalism, we had capitalists, right? For 400 years, merchants slowly gained power, slowly became dominant, and they adapted the state to their needs. So now we have a market state form. I say we do the same. We are commoners. We see that there is states. We see that there is market. And we are going to work for reverse co-optation. We're going to work and find ways to make it work for us, to change the functioning of the state and the market for the commons. So what I propose is not commonism, in the sense that there would only be commons. What I propose is common-centric societies, right? Where the state and the market function to help citizens freely contribute and freely associate to shared resources that we need to survive as humanity. I think that's a good way to end, probably. So thank you for your attention and everything.